Hi guys, welcome to the Lens Cap Chronicles. My name's Amanda and I'm in India. I have wanted to come here for so long and I'm so thrilled to be here. But it did come with a little bit of a sense of anxiety for me. The main reason is I've come on this trip alone and I've heard some very concerning stories and anecdotes about what's happened to some females when they've travelled to India alone. So I've done a ton of research and I've really not left much to chance, but I just wanted to share in a bit of a day-by-day vlog series how my thoughts have been each day at each of the kind of major tourist sites, how I felt, how safe I felt, what the experience has been like. So over the next couple of days, you're going to see me in various places. I'm currently in Delhi, but we'll be moving on to Agra, 2 nights in Jaipur, and then back to New Delhi for another night towards the end. So as the days progress, I hope my opinion doesn't change. At the moment, it's been fantastic, but let's see how we go. And just nothing but the honest truth. So my day so far has been great. I landed after almost a day of traveling from Australia, so I was pretty tired getting in this morning at around 6 a.m. India time. Now, one of the biggest stressors for me when traveling is actually just simply getting from the airport to the hotel. And I know that might sound like really silly, but that seems to be, for me, a time where I feel the most vulnerable. You've probably just arrived, have all your luggage, sometimes I've got some cash out of the machine, hopefully I've sorted your SIM, and trying to find a taxi, and all of that kind of negotiation process, knowing if someone's a legitimate taxi driver or, you know, the cab you're getting into is actually taking you to the right place, you're not going to be scammed, or worse, have your physical health threatened. They're all kind of high on my agenda and priority, and basically when I get from an airport to the hotel for any trip, I just breathe easy a lot more. So that's just a little bit of a background for me. But in terms of my experience this morning, it was such a breeze. And I think that is because I did a bit of planning. So I'm staying for the first night pre-booked by myself in a 5-star hotel. And no, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know I don't just stay in 5-star hotels. I really like to experience the whole breadth and spectrum of accommodations, especially in a country I've never been to before. However, for my own, I guess, mental peace and feeling of being safe, I just booked myself into a 5-star for that little bit of extra security. And so the hotel actually offers to send a transfer or an airport shuttle, but I'm actually booked on a private tour commencing tomorrow 9 a.m. and they have helped out with a transfer. So that worked well. That was only 21 Australian dollars. Not quite sure for the maths in rupees, but fairly standard. It was about a 20-30 minute journey, so I think that was a very reasonable cost. And I landed in the hotel safe and sound. I didn't get a SIM card though, and I'll tell you that story. So at New Delhi airport, once you arrive, if you actually leave the airport, you're not allowed back in. So you're not even allowed to kind of go in and collect someone there. Once you depart from the building, you're not allowed in unless you've got a ticket to go somewhere. So I knew that I had someone waiting for me with my name on a placard outside. And when I went to get the SIM card inside, I was told that I needed a one-time password, the OTP, but it needed to be sent to someone locally to process. So I went out to the guy, Ahil, my amazing driver and coordinator, thank you Ahil, who said yes, you can use my number, but then when I went back in, nope, barred, not allowed back in. So that was a bit of frustration, primarily because I like to have a SIM card for that extra sense of security as well. So without that, I do feel a little bit vulnerable, but same thing, I was going to a really trusted hotel and I read lots of reviews on you, Ahil. So no, I know you're a safe man, but no, I felt really safe with Ahil and his driver. And voila, the hotel actually arranged to have a man come and sort out my SIM for me. So we sat in the lobby and I paid the money, I think it was 1,300 rupees for 2 gigs a day, unlimited calls, local calls in India and lasts for a month. Perfect. So he did all of that for me just in the lobby of the hotel. Another reason why sometimes having that 5-star backup is it just provides you with a little bit of extra service. So in terms of my journey today, I have felt so safe, and it's really set me up to feel a sense of peace going forward in India. And I really don't like to say that even, but I guess just some of the stories I've heard have kind of made me stay on a bit more of a high alert. So that's my day one journey, and I'm going to check back in with you tomorrow when I will be driving to Agra, and that is with a new driver. We'll be going onwards and upwards from there, and I'll let you know my story tomorrow. Day 2 safety vlog coming to you from Agra. It's been another epic day in India, and we started off this morning in New Delhi. I drove 3 hours through to Agra, and we've just finished looking around the baby Taj Mahal and the Mehtab gardens, which have got incredible sunset views across the Taj Mahal. So it was my first glimpse of the Taj Mahal today. It was such a dream. It was so beautiful, and just one of those pinch me moments in life where you're finally seeing this icon that you've wanted to see for so many years. But let me bring myself back to the point of this video, and that is to tell you how I felt throughout the course of the day as we've traveled around from a safety point of view. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I do know that I'm in a very privileged position to have a private driver taking me around, and that's definitely going to impact and influence on the way I'm treated as I'm moving around the country. But I would say also that there would be a handful or quite a number of solo female travelers who may be interested in knowing still what it's like, even if you do have a private driver, because the stories out there are pretty scary, and I actually want to dispel a few of those myths, at least based on my experience so far. Yesterday, I guess, wasn't really a true reflection on the situation on the streets, because I literally got into a private vehicle, went to a 5-star hotel, and I was treated like an absolute princess, royalty. It was really amazing, but I don't think it's a true reflection of what it's like on the ground in India. So today was a little bit more representative of that, and I've got to say, I came away pleasantly surprised. So throughout the day, there were a few moments where if I was going to feel uncomfortable, it would have been those times. So for example, we stopped at a gas station with a whole heap of fast food joints, some public toilets that were pretty basic. There were a lot of local men, sellers and so forth in that area, and I don't feel like I was overly looked at. And I don't say that in any kind of extreme grandiose sense. It's more just that as a female solo traveller who was walking along, not with my guide at that point, quite a few hundred meters away to be honest, just in the thick of things amongst other locals and tourists. There were tourists there as well, but I didn't feel like I was being stared at, or if anything, I was being stared at because I was vlogging and I had my cameras out. I think that may have been the only reason, but I didn't feel uncomfortable or uneasy. Okay, so no comments, no weird stares, definitely no touching, so great outcome. Not that that should be a baseline, but just to give you some kind of idea of what it's actually like. Okay, so moving on from there, we drove through to Agra, and we stopped at the baby Taj Mahal, which is very cute and part of the Mughal dynasty. It's a mausoleum and it's related to the Taj Mahal in terms of the people who were buried there, but you can watch my video on that. I'm not going to go into these details here. Now, I did notice here a few more stairs. I didn't feel it was in an uncomfortable manner, but it was just a little bit more noticeable. It was one of the first times I've been stopped and asked for a photograph, and the guide I was with actually vetted this, which was really interesting. So a group of about 3 or 4 guys came up to me and asked me for a photo, and I just kind of said yes, no worries, just a standard response I guess. But my guide was very quick to step in and tell them that fine this one time for you four only, but we are continuing on our tour and she won't be available for photos. So he very much spoke on my behalf, and what that said to me was A, that I'm in really trustworthy hands, I feel very safe with my guide, and B, that the locals probably do have a sense of reticency, or I'm not sure if that's a word, but reluctancy to ask for photos with tourists if you're with a local guide, because they know there's a head honcho who is going to set them straight. So I did learn a few things out of that particular scenario. Sadly, there are a lot of beggars around, and that's a completely different kind of interaction, and I think you just need to be mindful of your response, how you're going to respond to beggars, and what you will or won't allow, and how much contact and attention you'll give the beggars. It's a really confronting sight and experience, but I think it's worth thinking about before you leave for India, your reaction, how you might respond to that. From the baby Taj Mahal, we actually drove through to Mehtab Gardens, which is the lookout point across the river to the Taj Mahal from behind, which is beautiful at sunset. This was the first time as well that I really noticed people staring into the windows of the car. Driving through the busiest part of Agra in the evening when the sun had gone down and it wasn't as hot, everyone comes out onto the street. It's so alive, it's such a buzz, and it's really exciting and fun. I found it fun. There's just beeping and horns and toots and cars crossing each other at every which way. And there's people alongside of the road selling vegetables and certain foods to other locals, but they do look in the car, and if I at any stage had my window down, there was definitely stares, but there was also a lot of waves and smiles and namaste. So it was a mixture and just an experience, not an uncomfortable one, again, just a really pleasant experience. But again, overwhelming of the senses in terms of just the sounds and the humidity in the air, the warmth. It's only 8 p.m, but my eyes just feel so ready for sleep after being in that hot air all day. Moving along, we then went into the Mehtab Gardens, and this is a hugely popular touristic site. People from every country there. So again, in a public space like that, there's not too much ogling or looking at you because there's other tourists, and they'd be in the same boat. And I'd be interested to hear what you thought if you were a tourist at the Taj Mahal, how you felt if you are a solo female traveller. But I didn't feel, again, I didn't feel uncomfortable. It was a perfectly fine experience. I guess part of this video is also to reassure solo female travellers that in certain circumstances, you can actually have a completely hassle-free holiday, particularly with a local guide and a private driver, which is not super expensive. It's definitely a lot more expensive than if you were to do it all yourself, walking around, getting rickshaws, booking lower standard accommodation, and that's totally fine, backpackers, etc., which is great, and I do love to do that sometimes in various countries, but in this particular country in India, I really wanted to do something that would make me feel personally more safe, and that was to get a private driver and stay in 4+ stars hotels. That was recommended to me, and so far it's come out on top. So if you find yourself in this position, so far, day 2, I'm coming back with a great report. Let's see what tomorrow brings. Day 2 safety vlog, and just doing a little excerpt from the Taj Mahal itself, where on exit I was quite inundated with requests for photos, and just completely harmless and lovely really. A couple of children, families, a few couples. They all wanted to have a picture. I think I'm just like this token tourist who a little bit of an amusement factor, I guess. So yeah, really nice experience. My guide, again, fabulous. He shooed a few people away and said, that's enough. So it's kind of strange. It makes you feel a bit like a celebrity. But yeah, just lovely people and nothing untoward. Very thankful for my guide though, because he does put a little bit of a cap on how many photos. I don't quite know how to say no sometimes, but yeah, really lovely, and the experience within the building itself was absolutely magical. Now, I wasn't actually sure whether I was going to mention this because I've had a really wonderful time on this trip. I've been really well taken care of. The guides have been amazing, but the last stop that we had at the marble demonstration was a little bit scammy, I felt. So I was taken into this place and told this is how the marble is made at the Taj Mahal, and they went and showed me how they make the incredible pietra dura. And of course, at the end, I just started having this sinking feeling that this was going to be an opportunity to sell me something, which of course it was. And these are kind of tables and tabletops, jewelry boxes, plates in the order of kind of 40 to 80,000 rupees. So they ain't cheap. I did not really appreciate that it hadn't been explained to me that it was going to be part of the itinerary. It was very unexpected. I wasn't prepared, and I think that would have helped if I'd at least known that that was what was going to happen. It was maybe a little bit of a dampener on the day. It just felt a little bit pressured and uncomfortable with the situation, and I didn't really budget to spend that much money on a pietra dura piece. Nevertheless, these are the things you learn on travel, and I guess you have to expect at a certain point. So,
One selfie.
you want selfie? With the children?
With children.
You want the children? Okay. All right, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Hello. Hello. Bye bye. Bye. See you. Bye. Okay, well, from the Taj Mahal to Jaipur, there's been a little bit that's happened in between then. We've been to Agra Fort, to the Fatehpur Sikri, and to Baori, and I've got slightly different slants on what's happened today at each of those sites. Now, before I cover Agra Fort, I just wanted to actually mention breakfast. And the reason I wanted to bring this up was that at the hotel in Agra, at breakfast time, was the most uncomfortable I've ever felt yet in India, which was directly after visiting the Taj Mahal. I walked into the restaurant associated with the hotel, and it was, at the time I walked in, predominantly men, which is fine. And I went to the buffet, I got my food, I sat back down again, and there was one man who just did not stop looking at me. I mean, even when I looked at him, most people's natural tendency would be to look away. He just held my gaze. It was so uncomfortable. So I looked away, and then kind of started continuing with my food. And then I looked up again and he's still watching, and I just felt like he did not stop watching. He did not divert his gaze at any stage. And I just felt so incredibly uncomfortable that I actually got up and moved my table so that my back was towards him, because I didn't know, I felt like going up and saying, please stop looking, you're making me feel so uncomfortable. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, that's not part of my culture to really do that. But that was just the one thing, I guess, that happened today that made me feel really super weird and uncomfortable. But then we moved on to Agra Fort, and I was definitely asked for more photos here, but my guide, my amazing guide, was vetting these photos and telling people they could have only 2 each. And I gotta say, this sounds a little bit big noting, but I think the reality is I'm just like this really strange kind of token Westerner. There weren't many other Westerners there. It was mainly Indian visitors from other regions coming to see the Red Fort. So I did stick out like a sore thumb. But my guide is just amazing. Honestly, he really just kind of kept a cap on things, and there were some really lovely people. a lot of husbands wanting their wives to be in a photo with me, which is really strange but really kind of lovely, and also children. So there was a lot of children coming into the shots and running up to me and holding my hand or touching my dress, and it was actually really beautiful and a really lovely way to interact with locals. So actually at Agra Fort, I really wanted to have photos of people who were nice to me. There was one lady who said, "Photo, you must have photo with me," and she was really aggressive, like yelled out at the top of her voice, and then grabbed my shirt as I was walking past, and I was like, what? That naturally didn't make me want to have a photo with her, but the little kids who ask so politely, and they're really beautiful women and men who just ask so politely. It's so unusual for me because it wouldn't be something I would naturally do in a country, but I mean, if that brings pleasure and joy to someone, I'm more than happy. I'd love to have a photo with people and actually love meeting people. So I usually get to know their names, where they're from, which is really, really sweet and nice. And yeah, generally my response is to say yes, but my guides were saying no. And in fact, my guide, he said to one man, no, she won't have photos. She's told me she will not have a photo even with me. And if you ask me, I will get in trouble if I let you have a photo with her. Which is completely untrue, and he was laughing as he said it. But it was just a way of keeping, I guess, too many men coming up towards me to having photos. Not that I have anything towards men. I love men. But yeah, sometimes it was just a little bit too much with lots of people. Okay, moving on to Fatehpur Sikri. Now, this was a much more rural site, and there was virtually no other Westerners when I was there. It's also summer, bearing that in mind. So in general, from what my guide has told me, there is much less Westerners, apart from Taj Mahal, of course, but everywhere else there has been significantly less Westerners or no Westerners. And at Fatehpur Sikri, there's actually a large amount of poverty there, and there were a lot of young children who lived in the region who were coming up to the car, banging on the windows, demanding money, kind of begging for money. It was really heartbreaking and really sad, and they weren't asking for photos, they were just wanting something from me that yeah, was just really confronting. Actually walking through to the Fatehpur Sikri was fine. I had a guide again that does really ease the relations sometimes between locals and yourself. What I would say is that there were a lot of local Indians again here wanting photos, which is totally fine. Just depends how much time you have in your day. If you're traveling a single solo person with fair skin from almost any country, I think that is just the recipe for wanting to have a photograph. Yeah, it's just natural. I've seen happen with many other people, especially at the Taj Mahal. So just bear that in mind. It's not a bad thing. Mostly these people are so genuine and kind, and they're just so enamored or fascinated or intrigued really by you, that it's actually a nice thing to do, to have a photo with them. But I think if you have kind of a little bit of intuition, you will know when it's kind of feels a little bit strange. Last stop today was in Baori, and oh my gosh, I had the best time there. I met so many local people, and actually it was the first time I didn't have a guide go with me. I just went to the booth to get my ticket with my driver, and then I hadn't booked a guide. I was offered a guide, but I kind of declined that because I just wanted to go in and experience it for myself, take some photos, and it was such a ball. It's a fairly small-ish venue, and Baori is amazing, by the way. It's a stepwell about 50 meters deep with all of these mesmerizing geometric patterns. If you haven't gone or put it on your list, you must put it on your bucket list. I digress. But I had the most amazing time meeting people, and these were just beautiful, kind-hearted Indian people, all from around the country, even some local people from Jaipur. And I met the most beautiful little kids, this really intelligent young girl, and her father was there with all of the family. it was just wonderful, and I was interacting with these people who were so kind and curious. They wanted photos, but like I had photos back with them because I just really enjoyed the experience. I wanted to have a photo of them in my life and in my world. So I really enjoyed that. And if you're watching and you met me at Baori, because there were probably about 30 people in total in various groups that I met and said hello to, then thank you so much for making my day. You really, it was a moment I'll never forget. And tomorrow we are in Jaipur. We are traveling around. We've got a city tour, so that will be interesting as well. I'll be going to quite a few places in Jaipur, and I'll give you my vlog tomorrow night on how that all goes. Thanks for listening, and I really don't mean this to be of any offense. I'm just trying to provide my thoughts and feelings on how it's been for me during my trip in India. As I mentioned, this was something I felt a little bit anxious about, and I tried to put in place various means that would make me feel a bit less intimidated or anxious. And if you're watching as a solo female traveller, it's entirely possible to come here and feel very safe and very protected, and the guides will definitely look out for you. And that would be my number one tip if you're in a highly crowded venue, or if you're in a very rural and remote venue, then sometimes having a guide or a local there with you will make all the difference. Today was epic. Oh my gosh, we had the best day in Jaipur. We saw the Wind Palace, the Water Palace, the Amber Palace, the Central Palace. So many palaces. It was just phenomenal. I went and experienced a hand block painting demonstration and saw a textiles shop. We went to the Observatory, where one of the kings has created all of these amazing sundials because he had a fervent interest in astronomy. And lastly, I've just been on the most amazing food walking tour with our guide through the streets of Jaipur. It was absolutely magnificent. We tried 10 courses with a few freebies thrown in. Just mind-blowing and so phenomenal. The overarching thing was during the day, the heat was just so unbearable that some of the tours we had to cut a little bit short because we were walking through these huge big open squares made of stone, these big palatial areas with all the reflections and the 45-degree heat. I did get a lot more of a sense of India and culture and life on the ground at grassroots level today, which was incredible, heartbreaking from a sense of the level of poverty, but also enlightening and encouraging for some of the positivity that these people show and the kindness that they showed to me and to us. So firstly, at the Wind Palace, we didn't really spend too long there. It was really just a photo stop. We did have to walk across the highway to the other side, so safety point of view, crossing highways, not a great idea if you're not a local or don't have a local with you. So fortunately, the few times today that we did that, I had a local with me and they kind of put out their hand and get the cars to stop. Plus knowing when to make a break and run for it through the traffic, a bit of a dodge effort. I lived to tell the story and it was kind of fun, not gonna lie. Sorry, Mum. Most of the places in Jaipur, I would say, had loads of hawkers, so people trying to sell you things. So many different kinds of things, trinkets, jewelry, food and drink, umbrellas to keep you cool, hats, anything you may need along your journey, they've got it, and they're right there tapping you on the shoulder sometimes or just kind of clutching at your arm. There was a lot of touching today, not inappropriately, but inappropriate in the sense that you shouldn't really be touching someone full stop that you don't know. Anyway, it was all with the intention of trying to sell product. I did have one very unfortunate event that made me yell, made me scream, surprise, really, from within the car. This little kid landed on my screen like that, just boom. And the sound gave me such a fright. I jumped and I was like, whoa. That was quite sad because we were stopped at the traffic lights and this little girl was just there for the entire length of the traffic light, knocking and tapping, and she saw a snacks jar, my little snacks container, and she was like begging for food and then money, and yeah, it's just really heartbreaking to see that and to have it like right there in front of you and not really be able to do too much. And then I've got this whopping big smile on my face because tonight was one of the best activities I've done in India so far, the walking food tour. We tried so many different foods and it was in the evening time where there's just so many more people out because it's much cooler. So much activity, horns beeping, blazing everywhere, and just people milling around, buying food, chatting. It's just all happening. And so we were walking in and around amongst this to various venues, trying food, and I felt completely safe. I was hassled a couple times, mostly by young children who were just wanting food and money. There was a time we gave food and then that wasn't enough. They still wanted money. But other than that, the main safety threat is really of your physical proximity to the traffic, because a lot of these food vendors are positioned right on the edge of the road, and you just have to be really mindful that even though it's a normal width road, there's around 5 imaginary lanes within that road, if not more. So you really need to be careful that you're not going to be taken out by a moped or a tuk-tuk or a rickshaw, because they're all kind of coming around at each other like this. The people are really friendly and so lovely. So tonight we met quite a few people. A lot of the food vendors are just kind of busy in making their food and interested in making their food, but the people milling around are kind of quite interested and wanting to chat to you. And we had such a lovely guide, beautiful, beautiful lady, and she gave us just the best tour. I will be making a video on that and I will put the link up here. But she ensured our safety, and she was the most expert road traffic controller I've ever seen, I think. Telling people to like stop and go, and you know, she was on top of it. Well done. The cars were in the palm of her hand. So today was absolutely wonderful. To sum up, there was not really any major issues. The people were beautiful, friendly. The kids were very forthcoming in requesting food and money, and the busyness, the traffic was extreme on overload. So just be very careful where you are walking around on the roads. Be diligent with your belongings, although our guide did leave her phone and belongings, I think twice at different places, and they come running after her for her phone to give her back her phone. So overall it was a very positive experience, and I just heartwarming moments really on the streets of Jaipur. Highly recommend getting out there and walking around, preferably with a guide, so that you do have a little bit of a sense of authority with you. But don't miss out on walking the streets when you're in Jaipur. I'm feeling a little bit taken advantage of this morning. Actually, when I got into the tuk-tuk, my guide bargained for a price. He told me it was going to be around 300. The guy asked for 500, and then I said 350. Then when we got into the actual tuk-tuk, the guide said to me, okay, so it's 350 per person, so you pay 700. And I was like, what? Like, no, you told me 350 per person. So expectation is that I would pay for him as well, but that wasn't declared up front. And I've got to say, a lot of the times on this tour, there's been so many hidden costs that have not been declared to me. We got to the mosque, and then it was another 50 to have this kind of outfit to cover me, which I totally understand the need to cover up in the mosque. But that was not kind of told to me or declared to me, and yes, 50 rupees is very kind of small cost to pay, but at the same time, this is just an example of quite a few things that have not been kind of forthcoming in terms of the entry fees and costs that are associated with the tour. So when you pay for a tour, you don't actually get the transport included, like the rickshaw today. So it's just a few little things that don't kind of always add up. So definitely if you're coming to India, just budget for a little bit extra, because they will find a way to get it from you. There are a lot of hidden costs, and the expectation is that you as the foreigner will pay for them. But yes, time to lift the spirits and recharged for a good day in Delhi. Coming to you at the end of my tour now, and I've decided to combine the last 2 days vlog reflections into one, because yesterday was a full day driving from Jaipur back to Delhi, and today was my Delhi city tour. Today was interesting, and I guess it highlighted to me what it's like to be as a single tourist in a chaotic city at the mercy of a guide you've just met. I'm not going to lie, I did feel a little bit uncomfortable with my tour guide in Delhi. I'm not here to badmouth anyone, but I guess I did feel a little bit uncomfortable because I didn't really feel a sense of warmth or actual interest or engagement in the task at hand, showing me around the city, and instead probably felt a little bit more of an agenda to be in the video after it was obvious that I was filming a vlog. Information on the tour and some of the sites we were visiting was very limited, and I guess it just felt a little bit more of like a rush to tick the checkbox of the next place we were going to without really much of an explanation about each place. After a day out in the 47-degree heat, I was so looking forward to my lunch break. And actually the city tour was cut short around 1:30 p.m, mostly because of the heat, but also because I was just really a little bit overwhelmed with the situation, and I just wanted some time by myself to recalibrate and recuperate. My driver, my beautiful driver, was so willing and wanting to help in that, but I did feel a bit like the city guide wasn't departing or leaving after the tour had finished, and he kind of came along and he was directing where I would go for lunch. It was going to be en route to the airport, and I didn't really have a say in where we were going. On top of that, he joined me for lunch, even though I'd made it fairly clear I just wanted to have a bit of space, and began telling me all about his private circumstances and his home life, and he knew also that I didn't have a lot of cash left on me, and so we'd kind of bypassed a few of the things on the tour because, in my opinion, he was anticipating that was going to be his tip, because he knew I wasn't going back to the ATM on my last day en route to the airport. So I did feel a little bit hijacked in terms of my trip and my tour on that final day, a little bit uncomfortable with the guide, not at all with my overarching guide who had arranged the entire trip for me, my weeks-long tour in India. He was fantastic. Ahil, thank you so much again. This is particularly and pertaining only to the final city guide. I felt a little bit ripped off after my Delhi city tour because I was taken to some various touristic sites with little warning or information about each one, kind of landed on the side of the road and was hustled out of the car with very little forewarning. There are a few hidden costs that I've alluded to in a previous video of mine, and it just felt really awkward and a bit disjointed, and I felt that I couldn't actually voice my opinions because I was the traveller, solo female, and I felt a little bit muted in what I was or wasn't able to ask for. So it wasn't the greatest finish to my time in India. I was then taken to the airport way too early. So we arrived around 2 p.m. and my flight was at 9 p.m. and unfortunately you're not actually allowed to enter or check in until at least 3 hours minimum before your flight. So it was taken to like a holding bay, this huge big open room where I just waited for about 4 hours in this stifling heat, un-air conditioned, on a 47-degree day with so many other people in there just waiting for their flight. It was not pleasant. And also there was no capacity to get any water. The vending machines only took local currency and I had no more local currency. So that was a bit of a nightmare ending. Finally did get on the flight and very smooth after that, no problems. But I guess just a little tip for the wise, don't get to the airport too early in Delhi or you will not be allowed onto your flight or able to check in. So bottom line, India is unpredictable and everyone is going to have a completely different experience over there. I think it really pays to have a local SIM card. It makes things a lot more safer, at least internally you'll feel a little bit more secure if you can reach out or talk to someone. Have someone you do know and trust, whether that be someone from the hotel or a reputable tour guide, someone at home. Update your family and friends on where you plan to stay, what your tour activities are for the day, just so that everyone's informed and can check in on you. Pre-arrange any taxis to and from the airport so that you know that they're credible. Be street savvy and don't go out after dark unless you have a plan or are with people that you know and trust. Finally, I've heard some untoward reports about females in cheaper hotels where Indian men are just coming in. They'll find a card entry into the room and make their way in, which is incredibly frightening and extremely concerning. I would highly recommend, if you have capacity, to book a 4-star or above hotel room in India, just for your own privacy and safety. I haven't really touched on clothing in this video, but I have read and seen a lot of YouTube videos and other blog posts about females who go out in fairly minimal clothing, slinky tops, so forth, which hasn't been well received by the locals and has been quite inviting of various Indian men and advances being made on them. As a fairly proactive and individual female, I would love to tell you just to ignore it all and go out and be yourself, but I do think that unfortunately India is a country that will not respect that, and you'll see that when you're walking around. At the end of the day, I'm not here to advise on that, but you obviously saw what I wore in India. It was fairly closed and covered, long sleeves. I think this t-shirt was probably the shortest t-shirt I ever wore in India. I never felt my personal physical safety threatened, but I do think there's capacity for that if you do choose to wear certain things. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm so thankful that I came away without any major physical threats in India, but I know others haven't been so lucky. So keep your wits, friends, and make sure that you've got a contact that you can be in touch with if you're feeling unsafe. In many ways, it's a really sad thing to be discussing this because India has so many beautiful places and wonderful people to meet, and you will really have a great time there. But this is just a sad reality that you will need to keep in mind. I'm so thankful that I had Ahil, who was my daily tour coordinator and guide, who put together this whole trip through India's Golden Triangle. He was wonderful and always on hand for any questions I might have through WhatsApp, and I felt very safe and in good hands. So thank you, Ahil. I wish you all the best if you're traveling to India, and please let me know in the comments below of any experiences you've had. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and that it's been of some use to you. If it has, please give it a like and subscribe so that you can join with me on future adventures. I'll catch you then.